I know, look at him. Okay.
It's your girl. I don't want to be in your video.
Bro, don't talk to the camera guy.
It's not my rights to film in here.
She is a professional fighter. He is a man holding a phone. And in about 3 seconds inside a Las Vegas post office, a trained UFC athlete crossed the room and put her hands on him on camera from more than one angle. Then the internet did what the internet does. Felony, deadly weapon, registered hands. She is going to prison. A year and a half later, here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. She was never charged with anything. Not a felony, not a misdemeanor, nothing. And the reason why is a lot more interesting than she got away with it. My name is George Graves. I am a criminal defense attorney, and I have spent more than 15 years on the wrong side of cases everyone on the internet had already decided. So I am not here to tell you she is a hero or a villain. I am here to tell you what the law actually says. By the end of this, you will know 3 things. Exactly what Nevada could have charged her with and why it tops out lower than you think. Why the her hands are deadly weapons felony. Everybody screamed about would have collapsed in a single question, and the federal property twist that almost nobody covering this case has mentioned, which may be the entire reason she walked. Stay with me on that third one, because it is the whole case. Here
I have the right to speak. I'm not. You see, you guys start something and you want to blame it on me? How pretty.
Sir,
How pretty.
you can continue with your business.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Say that to your employee. He's the one disturbing us.
Okay, now that's disrupting my lobby.
I'm not. I'm answering to what you're saying, ma'am. You're gonna go ahead and blame it on us when he
Not
started.
blaming nobody. I just said continue doing what you're doing.
All right.
Just not disrupt my lobby.
We weren't planning to. We're not planning to.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
They're literally making a scene in the whole post office.
No, you're just gonna be Karen.
Yeah.
is what we know, and only what we know. In December of 2024, a First Amendment auditor who runs the channel Auditing America was filming inside a post office in Las Vegas, Nevada. A woman confronts him. That woman is Juliana Miller, a professional mixed martial artist who won season 30 of The Ultimate Fighter. She is not a lookalike. She later sat down for a pre-fight interview and talked about this exact incident herself, so there is no question about who she is. The confrontation escalates. She tells him if he touches her, she will get him. He keeps filming, and then she closes the distance and makes physical contact. Las Vegas Metro responds, takes a report, and everyone goes home. And right there is the first thing people get wrong. Everybody wanted to know why she was not arrested on the spot. That is not how a misdemeanor works. In Nevada, for a misdemeanor an officer did not personally witness, they generally cannot just slap on the cuffs at the scene. What you get instead is a report, an investigation, and maybe a citation later, or the file goes to a prosecutor who decides whether to file a criminal complaint at all. So the decision was always going to happen later, on paper in an office, and later on paper in an office is exactly where small cases go to disappear. Now, the clip is dramatic. A trained fighter putting hands on a guy who is not fighting back looks bad, and outrage is easy. But outrage is not a charge, so let us do what the prosecutor actually had to do that day. Open the Nevada statute book. In Nevada, what she did has a name, battery. The statute is NRS 200.481, and the definition is broad. Battery is any willful and unlawful use of force or violence on another person. Here is the part people miss. You do not need an injury. You do not need a bruise. Unwanted, intentional contact is enough to be battery. So far, so bad for her. But the statute does not stop at battery. It is a ladder, and the rung you land on is everything. Base level, simple battery, no weapon, no serious injury is a misdemeanor. Maximum 6 months in county jail and a $1,000 fine. To climb to a felony, the prosecutor needs one of a short list of things: substantial bodily harm, strangulation, a deadly weapon, or a victim in a protected class, like a police officer or a sports official. A First Amendment auditor with a phone is none of those things. There is no special enhancement for assaulting a YouTuber. So unless somebody got seriously hurt and nobody did, the absolute ceiling here is a 6-month misdemeanor. Already the prison talk is dead. But the internet had a workaround.
I know, I wish you were here. That's what I was saying. Like, my boyfriend watches his videos all the time. Don't probably
Oh, and you still don't earn.
don't fight for
That's crazy.
Still don't want mine what?
You watch these videos and you still don't agree with freedom? Okay.
It is your freedom.
Okay, so why are you mad about it? You called your boyfriend and everything?
Yeah, he watches these videos all the time.
Good. He probably told you not to be a Karen.
Not to do what? I didn't tell you not to film.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
I'm not a Karen. I didn't tell you not to film.
You're right.
The workaround was this. She is a trained fighter. A trained fighter's hands are deadly weapons. Therefore, felony battery with a deadly weapon. 2 to 10 years, case closed. It is a great story. It is also, as a matter of law, almost certainly wrong. Let me show you why. Nevada defines a deadly weapon in NRS 193.165. There are 2 ways to qualify. 1, an instrument that by design is likely to cause substantial harm or death. Hands obviously fail that one. 2, and this is the one prosecutors reach for, any device or material that under the circumstances in which it is used is readily capable of causing substantial bodily harm or death. That second prong is fact-specific. It is not about your resume. It is about what actually happened in that room. And here is the question that ends the argument. If her trained hands were truly used as a deadly weapon, readily capable of causing substantial bodily harm, then where is the substantial bodily harm? He is right there, still on his feet, still narrating to his own camera. There is no hospital visit on the record. No documented serious injury. You cannot argue the hands were deadly while the alleged victim is calmly continuing his live stream. I could not find a single published Nevada case that says a fighter's bare hands are automatically a deadly weapon, and that is consistent with most courts, which reject the idea that trained hands are automatically a deadly weapon. There is no registered hands law. It does not exist. Anywhere. Now do not hear what I am not saying. Hands can absolutely be a deadly weapon. Courts across this country have put people in prison on deadly weapon and serious injury enhancements for beatings delivered with nothing but fists and feet. A man who stomps another man into a coma does not get a pass because he showed up unarmed. But notice what actually flips that switch. It is not the attacker's training, it is the damage. The enhancement attaches when there is a shattered orbital bone, a brain bleed, a victim who does not get back up. The law looks at the wound, not your resume. So a UFC fighter who beats someone half to death at that post office is looking at a felony all day long. A UFC fighter who shoves a man who then keeps cheerfully narrating to his phone is looking at most, a misdemeanor. Same hands, completely different case. The injury is the whole ballgame. So strip away the myth and you are left with one misdemeanor. And that should have been a simple case, except it happened in the one kind of building that turns simple into a mess. Remember the open question from the top. Where this happened may be the whole reason she walked. It happened in a post office. A United States post office is federal property. And the second you are on federal land, Nevada is not the only sheriff in town. There is a federal assault statute, Title 18, Section 113, that covers assaults inside what the law calls the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States. That includes federal property like a post office. Striking someone with no serious injury lands at subsection A4, assault by striking, up to 1 year in federal custody. Same ladder as the state, different courthouse. Now, a lot of people online jump to a different statute, Section 111, assault on a federal officer. Forget it. Section 111 protects federal employees and officers. The postal clerk would be covered. A member of the public filming in the lobby is not a federal officer. 111 does not apply, full stop. And there is another layer most people have no clue about. The post office has its own police. The United States Postal Inspection Service is one of the oldest federal law enforcement agencies in the country. Postal inspectors are armed federal agents, and there is a separate postal police force on top of them. A crime that happens inside a post office is, on paper, their turf. So picture the actual chain that day. Las Vegas Metro, a state and local agency, rolls up to a federal building to handle something that may not even be theirs to handle. Do they write it up and ship it to the postal inspectors? Do the inspectors care about a shove with no injury? Does any of it ever land on the desk of a prosecutor with the authority to charge? Every handoff in that chain is a place a small case can quietly die. And on a misdemeanor this minor, it usually does. So here is the trap that in my read is the real story. When a crime happens on federal property, jurisdiction can be exclusive to the federal government, shared between federal and state, or just federal ownership with the state still in charge. Most post offices sit in the first two buckets under Title 18, Section 7, which means the charging decision may not even belong to the Clark County District Attorney. It may belong to the United States Attorney. And think about what that does. Las Vegas Metro shows up, takes the report, and hands a misdemeanor level punch with no injury to the federal system. The United States Attorney's Office, which handles terrorism and trafficking and fraud, looks at a shove at a post office and says, "Not our caseload." Meanwhile, the local DA looks at federal property and assumes the feds have the lead. Everybody has a reason to let somebody else decide. And somebody else never does. That is not a loophole she found. That is a structural dead zone that swallows minor cases on federal land all the time. The post office may have saved her without her ever knowing it.
Never said anything mean to you.
That's not true. He started talking to us. And he was wrong about the information he was saying.
And he also forgot to apologize, which is the nice thing to do. But obviously snowflakes like yourself would never.
Oh, snowflake? I could KO you with one punch, little bitch.
Oh, really?
You know what takes balls?
Yeah, call your boyfriend. Why don't you call your boyfriend? Why don't you call your boyfriend and tell him to do that for you? We'll be right outside. Because obviously you're not going to get away with that.
You can't kill me.
Yo, she said, I don't have a problem with you recording now.
Now the objections, because you are already typing them. But she threatened him. But he was provoking her. Does that not justify it? In Nevada, self-defense is real. The statutes are there, NRS 200.275, and the reasonable force rule. But self-defense requires a reasonable belief of immediate bodily harm, and force no greater than necessary. Here is the hard line. Provocation is not self-defense. Somebody putting a camera in your face, asking annoying questions, even insulting you does not legally let you put your hands on them. Annoyance is not a threat, so as a pure legal defense, the harassment angle is weak. He would have had to physically menace her, and I want to be precise about this because it trips everyone up. In this country, being annoying is not a crime and it is not an assault. The auditor can film you, narrate about you, call you names, ask you the same question 40 times, and stand just close enough to make your skin crawl. Legally, none of that is a threat of imminent harm, and almost none of it lets you lay a finger on him. We do not have some fighting words exception that says cross this line of rudeness and you may now be struck. The law puts the burden on the person who throws the first punch every single time, no matter how badly the other person was asking for it. That is a hard pill. It is also the rule, but, and this matters, provocation does not need to win in court to matter to a prosecutor, because there is a second wrinkle here, and it cuts against the auditor. Everybody assumes the auditor had an absolute right to be filming inside that post office. He did not. There is a specific federal regulation, 39 CFR 232.1, that governs photography on postal property. News photography is allowed in lobbies and entrances unless there are signs prohibiting it or security tells you to stop. Everything else needs permission from the local postmaster, so whether a monetized YouTube auditor even counts as news under that rule is genuinely contested. If that post office had a no filming sign, he may have been the one violating a federal regulation. Now that does not give Miller the right to hit him, it does not. But put yourself in the prosecutor's chair. You have a minor misdemeanor, no injury, a complicated federal venue, a possible self-defense argument, and a so-called victim who may have been breaking the rules himself and who films confrontations for a living. How hard are you fighting to file that case? And what if someone had been seriously hurt? Different video entirely. Substantial bodily harm flips the state charge to a Category C felony and the federal charge to that 10-year subsection. The injury, or the lack of it, is the hinge the entire case swings on. No injury, no leverage. Let me change the facts on you, because this is where it gets useful for your life, not just hers. Take this exact encounter and move it 20 feet, out the front door, onto the public sidewalk. Now the federal property question vanishes. It is a clean Nevada battery, and the Clark County DA owns it with nobody to hand it off to. The same shove that disappeared inside the post office is a chargeable case on the sidewalk. Location is not a footnote in criminal law. Location is sometimes the entire case. Now change one more thing. Say the auditor had shoved her back or swung. People assume that is automatically self-defense. Sometimes it is, but often what you have just created is two batteries, two suspects, and a prosecutor who looks at a mutual brawl between two people who both wanted the smoke and declines the whole mess. The moment a fight becomes mutual, it often becomes unchargeable for everybody. That is not a loophole. That is just how a prosecutor triages a fight where nobody is clearly the victim, so stack it all up the way a real prosecutor does on a Monday morning. Jurisdictional limbo on federal property. No serious injury. A victim who monetizes these confrontations and does not look like an unwilling crime victim to a jury. A muddy self-defense and provocation picture, and the simple reality that prosecutors are not required to charge every provable offense, especially the smallest ones, when they are drowning in serious cases. Each one of those on its own is a reason to pass. She had all five. This case did not slip through a crack. It found every exit the system has, and it took all of them. One more thing, because somebody always asks, could she still be charged today? For the state, no. Nevada's statute of limitations on a misdemeanor is 1 year, under NRS 171.090. That window slammed shut a long time ago. For the federal misdemeanor, the clock is technically 5 years under the general federal limitations statute. So on paper, that door is still cracked open, and do not assume cracked open means nothing. New evidence can reopen the conversation. If a clearer angle surfaced, if the auditor pushed hard for federal charges, if she racked up a pattern of similar incidents, a prosecutor could in theory pull this back off the shelf inside that 5-year federal window. The door is not locked. It is just that nobody has any interest in walking through it. But realistically, a year and a half of total silence from the U.S. attorney is not a pause, it is an answer. Absent some new evidence or real political pressure, this case is over. She was never charged not because the law could not reach her, but because by design, the law gives the smallest cases the most ways out. And that is the lesson that actually matters here, whether you are a fighter, an auditor, or just somebody who got into it on a bad day. The charge you fear is almost never the charge you face. The system runs on discretion, jurisdiction, and injury, and most people have no idea how those three levers move. Breaking down exactly how those levers move case by case is what I do every single week for the members of this channel. If you want my members-only breakdowns, the cases and settlements that never make the main feed, plus every new video a full day before everyone else, join the defense brief. The link is right below this video. It is the best way to actually understand this stuff before you are the one standing in that lobby. So next time you see a viral clip and the comments have already handed down a verdict, ask the question they never do: what does the statute actually say? Because the answer is usually not the one getting all the likes. I am George Graves. Know your rights.